Don't be a Putin in your organization. With that, I don't mean like the political stuff in terms of, police state, suppression of dissidents, etc., but more like your leadership style. And with that, I don't mean like, don't be forceful or don't have subordinates or don't correct people or something like that, but don't have a particular leadership style. Or if you, for example, if you're a consultant, look out for this particular leadership style. And with that particular leadership style, I mean, you have to ask why someone is in a certain position of hierarchy of power. Ideal for example, for agile companies, with agile project management, you have a flat hierarchy. But what does it mean, flat hierarchy? Does it mean like, you have to be small, or the individual managers have many different teams? No, it basically means how independent can each unit be. So there could be a hierarchy, but the question is, how independent are those individual parts? In many companies, you have the situation, or in some companies, it depends very much on the industry, on the country, on the culture, but you have in a lot of companies the situation where maybe the middle manager or really the CEO is at the top, and you see a situation where a lot of emails, for example, are forwarded to the boss, or the boss is added in the close copy of each email, or when there is a decision, the CEO has to come in, or it has to be escalated to upper management. And this is challenging, of course, for the speed and for the accuracy of your decisions. For example, you have a project and you have a project manager, and the project manager reports to another manager, and the manager then reports to the CEO. So, and of course, if you have a situation of distrust, and if you have a situation where the CEO is only in the position because he kind of can control middle management, especially through playing them out against each other, in terms of that each of those areas or parts of the company cannot do something on its own. So they cannot have own decisions, but they always have to ask a CEO for coordination, for decision making, etc. So, for example, if you have a situation, you have like 4 departments. One is sales, the other is marketing, the next is development, and the next one is support. So each of those 4 departments of the company cannot act on their own. I mean, they cannot produce a product without they cannot sell a product without marketing and product support or development. So each of those 4, they have to interact together. And if their only connection point is really upper management, then project coordination has to go through upper management or even the CEO. Of course, the advantage for the CEO is the CEO can control those 4 departments easily. They are not running like amok and doing their own thing. And the same thing you see in dictatorships. Usually our image of dictatorships is, dictatorships have to be very hierarchical, of course, that you have someone at the top and then like a pyramid downwards, and it's very nicely structured. But in reality, you always have a situation where one part of this pyramid cannot act without the other part, because they have to go through the CEO, which in turn is a foundation of the power of the CEO or of the manager or something like that. So it's a central figure, and without that central figure, they cannot act. And you also see this situation like further down in the hierarchy, like in teams, if you have one person and without that person, you cannot like talk with a customer, or you cannot talk with a certain other department that is the main contact person, then you also have like this power problem and this information problem. I mean, even think about that person goes on vacation. So should you have like a special number where you call them? Or should you rather have a situation where individual team members can do their own decision, or individual team members know the individual team members of the other department? So in this regard, you find this both in companies as well as in political structures. And let's look at a few examples. How does this really look in the political sphere, for example, with the current conflict in the Ukraine? You have commands, of course, from Putin down to his generals, through the oligarchs, and through middle management, and through the individual commanders down to the team. The question is now, does the individual commander, general, minister, etc. have the power to say no? To say, I see this differently. I mean, even if the person has the power to say no, that person, because of the different departments of maybe in the military you have like Air Force, Navy, and Army, that individual person cannot coordinate with the other departments or with the other branches of politics or of the military. So the individual general can execute orders very well, but the individual general hasn't an own responsibility to plan the whole thing, because for each action the general has to ask his superior or her superior how to proceed here, because only the superior has the context to the other branches of government. I mean, politically, of course, the advantage is that none of these generals can like coordinate like a coup or something like that, because the power is further above. But on the other hand, you have the situation that each branch of the military cannot really act very well in a coordinated way. Also, you might have to withhold some information simply to control those individual branches of the military or even individual parts of the army. And the same applies also to companies. So whenever you see in a company where you have to ask your superior, who then have to ask his superior to really execute a project from beginning to end, then you have a massive slowdown and you have a misdistribution of information. Because obviously the team working on the project or indirect communication with the customer, for example, sales or support, has a better view on the actual problem in the company. Same with like individual army units, they have a better view on the situation on the battlefield. In addition, if you have a leadership style that is very hierarchical and like suppressive, and where you say, okay, you're the superior and you don't meet your middle management or your team on the same eye level, then you could be in a situation, of course, of power. That means people will tend to agree with you. That means, of course, the information they provide you will be skewed towards your already existing expectations. Of course, on the first side, this sounds great. Okay, people will act like you want them to, but this also means, for example, they will make things look better than they actually are, or add, for example, to their estimates, add a buffer so that they will say, okay, it takes 9 months or so. And although they know it will be ready in 6 months, simply because they fear the repercussions if it actually then takes 9 months. So they add a buffer. So whatever data you're fed then in this position really of power at the top, you can't really trust it. So decisions you will be making and decisions other people depend on will be factually wrong, because you're basing your decisions on beautified reports from the teams. So the data you're using to make your decisions don't reflect reality. That means really, instead of like sitting on your high throne at the top, forcing people to include you in their decision, you have to go down on the factory ground, down with the teams and see what is the actual situation, and not expect people to be people pleasers or to please you in that regard and tell you things that aren't so, like add buffers or tell you, yeah, it's great, until there's a real problem, and then they have to admit then that there's a real problem. So this is also connected to a culture where people can make really mistakes and not be reprimanded because of them. Instead, create a culture where people are basically promoted if there are mistakes, because making mistakes also means, okay, they tried something and okay, it didn't work out, but at least they tried something and they at least brought or tried to bring the project forward. So that's something you have to keep in mind. So, and if they can't coordinate directly with each other, but always have to go through the CEO or through management, they are both discouraged to even attempt the communication, so they rather finish their stuff and then move it over to the next department. And it takes a while, especially when there are plan changes, because then everything has to be coordinated again, and maybe CEO is not available and the CEO doesn't have enough time, or upper management doesn't have enough time. So everything goes slow and slow and slow. Also, each part or each department of the company doesn't really know why they're doing certain stuff, that the other department has finished something. For example, sales says, okay, our product will be able to do this and that. And then development says, oh, but this takes another year of development. And sales says, oh, okay, they didn't know that. And maybe there are 1,000 issues in the support department that is not like forwarded it to the development department or to the sales department. So it becomes a really, really chaos. And whenever they have to attempt to make something more complex, they usually fail or it is delayed. And you need separate project managers that really have to get into this. So to sum up, don't be a Putin. That means don't try to control your teams, your company, your departments in a way where they have to talk to you to execute something. Sure, there might be reports or something like that where you observe, but the actual execution part, try to minimize any communication that goes up and down, because those are the major delays. And also encourage to combine teams in multidisciplinary teams. So don't have like a separate sales department and that development department. Sure, they might be talking a lot among themselves, but they have to know what they're doing. And this is a huge cost factor further down the line. I mean, it might be more efficient on the first side that you have these two departments separately where they really can focus on it, but it's much better to have that communication combined and have them talking with each other. In this regard, stay safe and think about your company structure. Try to find situations, try to find in your org chart where you might have that situation, and just invite the people and talk about if you can improve that. Thank you for listening. On my channel, you will also find additional videos about project management, about publishing, and about coaching, agile coaching. That's also something I offer on my website. So if this topic interests you and you want to bring someone in to consult you in your own project and come up with ideas how to improve the situation, just contact me via my website. It's all down in the description. And if you want to subscribe to this channel, I will now and then add new content, usually every week on Sunday evening, but also now and then a video about current events or something I found out. So again, thank you for listening and see you next time. Bye.